Tonight I'll tell you a story unlike any other one of memory, identity, and a hospital that never truly let go of the people inside it. What started as a simple research trip for Dr. Evelyn Moore became something far more disturbing. She thought she was studying a place. She didn't know the place was studying her. So settle and let the room grow quiet. Listen to the sound of wind against broken glass and the echoes that don't stop when the halls go silent. This is what happened when she stepped inside Waverly Hills and didn't come out alone. They told me it was just folklore hillborn hallucinations stitched together from whispers and shadows. But I've studied folklore. I can tell you what it is, how it moves, why it survives, and what lives in Waverly Hills. Art is no story. It's a hunger, patient and real, eating memory, chewing time. I went there to trace superstition. What I found instead was a living wound, stitched shut by silence and now torn wide open. They asked me to evaluate ghosts. Not literally, of course not in the language of tenure or grant proposals. The university phrased it differently. Assess cultural contamination of site narratives prior to commercial redevelopment. I knew what they meant. Take a crumbling tomb of 63,000 deaths, slap a spa on it, and make sure the folklore doesn't scare off the investors. I told myself I didn't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in what people make of ghosts and the ways trauma clings to place, and stories so dense with grief they warp time, and so I went. Waverly Hills, Hill 93, Louisville, Kentucky, an abandoned tuberculosis sanatorium nestled in a belt of trees that seem darker than they should be. The building loomed like a collapsed lung, 5 stories of brick and shadow, built into the slope like it was trying to sink back into the earth. The air reeked of wet rust, mildew, and something faintly sweet like syrup over rotting meat. There were no birds, no wind, no echo. The man who met me at the gate wore a vest and tight despite the summer heat. Dr. Moore, he said, smiling too easily. Sam Whitaker, site liaison, bit of a local historian. He extended a hand that smelled like old leather. I didn't take it. You're late, he said, still smiling. Missed the morning tour. I wasn't here for a tour. Oh, but you are, he said. Everyone's here for a tour, whether they know it or not. That was the first inconsistency. I hadn't told him my arrival time had changed. The building opened like a wound inside. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. The floor groaned beneath our steps, and a weak beam of light filtered through slatted windows. Like the dying of day permanent twilight, I expected echoes. There were none. You'll hear stories, Sam said as we passed the nurse's station. Room 502, the body chute. Little Timmy with his red ball. Ghost hunters love that stuff. I'm here for folklore, I said. Not ghost tour. Same thing, he replied, and something in his tone curdled the air. We passed a wheelchair tipped on its side. Mold clawed its way up the walls like something trying to escape. In a children's ward, faded murals stretched across peeling paint boxes, clouds, a sun with black eyes. Someone had scrawled over one of them with chalk. R.T. remembers. They gave me a room on the 3rd floor for the full experience, Sam said, grinning. There was no electricity, just a cot, a lantern, and a portable recorder. My phone had full bars but refused to connect. The Wi-Fi network listed was patient_72. I unpacked slowly, notebook, recorder, backup batteries, a copy of Hill Spirits and Hollow Bones, folklore of the Appalachian South, marked up with my own notes. I almost didn't notice the object on the knitstand. A child's marble, pale green, cracked. I didn't put it there. That night I heard breathing, not mine. Not close but in the walls, rhythmic, shallow, wet. I told myself it was pipes. Old buildings breathe. Then I remembered. Waverly was built without central plumbing. Patients used bedpans. The only pipes ran to the death tunnel. I did not sleep. I didn't sleep. Not really. I must have drifted because, when I opened my eyes, the lantern was back on. Its glow was thin, jaundiced, like it had aged overnight. The marble lay still by my cot, but it wasn't in the same place I remembered. It had moved 3 inches closer. Just the building settling, just memory playing tricks. Still, I logged the position in my notebook. Time, 6:17 a.m. Weather, overcast, sleep, fractured, notable sensory events, footsteps, breathing, voice. No confirmed witnesses. This is how you manage fear. You taxonomize it, turn it into data, tin it like a specimen, dissect it until it resembles something harmless. The hallway outside my room felt wrong. Each door was numbered, but not sequentially. 300 was next to 305, 306 repeated 3 times. My room had no number at all. I walked the wing twice and ended up back at my door without meaning to. Sam later told me this floor had been partially remodeled in the 70s before funding dried up. Plaster dust got in the lungs, he said. Poetic. Huh? I didn't ask how he knew what room I was in. At breakfast, which was stale coffee and a vending machine granola bar, I met Daniel Reyes. He was pacing outside the old chapel, muttering into a GoPro. I'm not saying I believe it, he was saying, but the EVP picked up something from 500 to last night, clear as hell. He watches. It's always watching with this place. He looked up at me, wary. Academic, he asked. Anthropologist. You, ghost chaser. Before that, Army. Before that, drunk. He grinned. He'll straighten me out. What do you mean? He held up the GoPro. I saw something in the chute. Can't unsee it. He didn't elaborate. The death chute was originally a service tunnel, a sloped corridor used to discreetly remove corpses from the hospital, out of sight from dying patients. They say up to 80 bodies passed through it. Sam called it a myth, overblown. Tuberculosis wasn't a massacre, just a slow collapse. But when I walked its edge that afternoon, I felt the weight of mass absence, a hollowness in the air. The walls seemed too tight, the angle too steep. It smelled not of death, but of soil, wet, disturbed earth. I saw scratch marks on the rusted railing, children's height. That evening, I interviewed Martha Green, 93 years old, former nurse. Lived 3 miles downhill in a trailer surrounded by dead televisions and wind chimes made from surgical scissors. She spoke without punctuation. They don't leave, you see, we buried them, but they stayed. There's something Underhill 93, not bones. No, it's a memory, older than us, older than lungs. We fed it, oh, we fed it every shift, but it's still who? Angry? I asked what she meant by we fed it. She touched her throat. Sometimes they choked on their own lungs. And we helped them along, not mercy, not murder, just made it faster, made it cleaner. Don't look at me like that. I was a girl. I didn't ask, I was told. I asked her about the marble. She smiled. He likes marbles. Who? She looked out the window, the one still sick. That night I set up my recorder beside the cot. At 2:08 a.m. I woke to the sound of wine, but the windows were sealed shut. The recorder light blinked. I hit playback. White noise, and then a child's voice. Why'd you come back? Not frightened, not curious, accusatory. I didn't leave my room the next morning. Not out of fear. That's what I told myself. I needed to listen to the tape again, needed to dissect the voice, assign it an origin, find the glitch in the equipment. Maybe it was Daniel screwing around. Maybe it was a preloaded sound file. Pranksters are always drawn to places like this, but the voice had said something else I hadn't noticed at first. Right after the question, why'd you come back? There was a rustling, like pages turning. Then it whispered, you know what they did. I shut off the recorder. My hands were shaking. I finally left the room just after noon. The hallway had changed again. Room 310 yesterday, a collapsed storage closet, was now open and pristine. Clean floors, white sheets, a tray of plastic medical tools neatly laid out. The kind of setup they used for thoracoplasty. I recognized the rib spreader, the bone saw. The room smelled of antiseptic and boiled blood. I stepped back, blinked, gone, dust, mold, a collapsed wall. That was the second inconsistency. That night I dreamed. I'm recording this immediately. Before the images slip, I'm walking barefoot down the main hallway of Waverly, but it's cleaned, polished. Bright with afternoon sun, someone is pushing a gurney ahead of me. I can't see who, it's just the back of a white uniform, white shoes squeaking on tile. I follow. We pass open doors where children lie quietly in beds, their mouths open in voiceless screams. Each room is colder than the last. Then we reach the end of the hallway. There's a window. I look out and see myself, standing in the woods, staring up at the hospital, watching this moment happen from the outside. My reflection turns, looks at me, ... Her mouth moves. She says, you left them here, then the glass cracks. The figure behind the gurney stops, turns. It's not a nurse, it's me, wearing my own face, but with hollow sockets where the eyes should be. The mouth opens, wider than possible. Inside, a single green marble. I woke choking on air that wasn't there. The room was dark, the recorder was still on, and there was a fresh handprint on the inside of the window. This one was adult-sized. On the fourth day, I went underground. The basement had been sealed for decades. Water damage, they said, mold, collapsed storage racks. But Sam had keys. Of course he did. You'll find your ghosts down there, if that's what you're looking for, he told me. Or maybe they'll find you. He handed me an industrial flashlight, the kind search teams use after earthquakes. The stairwell into the archives was damp, lined with pipes that sweated, even in the cold. The deeper I went, the more the building shifted around me. Concrete turned to stone. Ceiling tiles gave way to bare wood crossbeams. It felt older than it should, like the hospital had grown down into the hill. The flashlight flickered only once. I told myself it was nothing. The shelves were rusted, boxes collapsed, patient records chewed by silverfish. Most were illegible, but some pages were perfectly preserved. as if kept dry by a will stronger than moisture. That's when I found it. A patient intake form, stained, yellowing. Name: Moore, Agnes R. Admitted, March 1935, age 17. Diagnosis: pulmonary tuberculosis. Notes: unresponsive to standard treatment. Believes in a presence inside the chest cavity. Reports dreams of the building itself breathing. My grandmother's name was Agnes. She never spoke of her youth. I should have left then, walked back upstairs, caught a cab, deleted the recordings, written a polite report, and buried the truth under academic neutrality. But something clicked when I read her name, a deep tension, like an old wound finally reopening. I kept reading. Another document. This one ... not typed. Not even paper, but highlight something animal. Inked in looping red characters I didn't recognize. It hummed. That's not metaphor. The page hummed in my hand, a low vibration in my wrist bones. A frequency just below hearing that made my vision blur. I blinked just once. The entire shelf was empty, just dust. When I climbed back upstairs, the flashlight was dead. My watch read for 38 p.m. My phone said 1:13. Sam met me by the main stairwell. You were down there long time, he said. Maybe an hour. He tilted his head. You went down just after breakfast. Later that night, Daniel cornered me. You've been in the basement, he said. It wasn't a question. I was researching patient records. He shook his head. That's where it started for me, too. What did? He leaned in, whispering like a man afraid the walls might hear the building as layers, like skin. If you go deep enough, it remembers things that never happened, things it wants you to see. He handed me a photograph. Black and white, blurry, it showed a woman strapped to a table, her face turned away. There was something reaching into her chest, not a hand, but a root or maybe smoke. Daniel whispered, I think it's still feeding. I woke to find the marble gone, the cracked green one, the first one vanished from the knit stand. The red swirl marble remained pulsing faintly in the dim light, almost warm. When I picked it up, I wrapped it in gauze and sealed it in a Ziploc bag, logging the time, 6:44 a.m. But when I looked again, 6:43. Just a minute, I thought, but the air felt different, thicker, as if something had inhaled, and time with it. The eastern wing of the 5th floor had been roped off, officially due to collapse risk, but the old elevator shaft still opened onto it if you knew how to override the security lock. I wasn't planning to visit room 502, but my feet didn't listen. Room 500 has its legends, a nurse who hanged herself, another who jumped, whispers from inside when it's empty, shadows behind the glass. Ghost hunters love it. I'd always considered it folklore at best, performative at worst, until I stood in front of it. The number plaque had been removed, but I knew it. The door was cracked open like a mouth mid-breath. Inside, an exam table, rusted, a broken IV stand, empty pill trays on the ground. No graffiti. No vandalism, just stillness, until the lights flickered just once, and the door slammed shut behind me. I tried the handle, jammed, tried the flashlight, dead. The room grew darker, not like the sun going down, but like the light was being swallowed. And then I heard it, breathing, but not mine, not from the hallway, from the floor. I looked down. A crack had formed in the tile, thin as a vein, and from it, A faint fog began to rise, smelling of disinfectant and rot. Shapes shifted within it, figures half-formed. One of them opened its mouth, and instead of a voice, a marble rolled out. I screamed, or thought I did, because when I blinked, I was back in the hallway, standing outside room 502. The door was shut, locked time to 12 p.m., except my last recorded note was from 11:54. Back in my room, my recorder was still running. It captured something. I've played it 50 times. My voice panicked. The floor cracked. I saw it. I heard, then silence. Then another voice overlapping mine, a whisper, urgent. You don't remember being born, but you screamed. You screamed anyway on the recorder. Just before the static cut in, a single piano note rang out. There is no piano in Waverly Hills, but the same note played again that night. From inside the walls I tried to leave, not for good, just long enough to reset, to ground myself in air that didn't stink of mildew and grief. I needed noise, real noise, cars, people, normalcy. I needed signal. I walked the trail behind the hospital where the hill sloped down toward the road. Supposedly, there was a break in the trees where reception came back. My phone buzzed once, but instead of messages or missed calls, the screen flashed white, then black, then patient _72. Incoming call. No number, no name. I didn't answer. The screen froze. When I turned back, the trail behind me was gone, not overgrown, gone. The woods were thicker than they had been, too thick. Old-growth trees I didn't remember passed on the way down. I tried to retrace my steps. 20 minutes, no clearing. 30, still no path. And then, just when the panic began to close my throat, I stepped out onto the gravel service road, directly in front of the rear delivery dock of the hospital. Later that day, I met Reverend Blackwood. He showed up uninvited. A wiry man, weathered by wind and fire, skin tanned like driftwood, eyes too sharp for his age, a black duster, and a silver cross that looked handmade. I came because the hill is waking up, he said. Who told you I was here? Nobody. The land did. I tried to shut the door. He placed his hand on it. Firm, light, and moving. You've got the blood for it, he said. Same as her. You didn't know. Know what? He pointed down. Not at the floor, at the earth beneath it. This place was built on silence. Not just death, not just ghosts, but the kind of quiet that remembers what it was before people got here. Your grandmother knew. That's why she never came back. I asked him if he believed in hauntings. He shook his head. Not ghosts, echoes, deep ones, the kind that find a voice in the right throat. And then, without warning, he touched my chest gently, like a doctor, right above the sternum. There's something waiting behind your ribs, he said. It doesn't speak yet, but it will. That night the power failed. Not just the lights, everything. Daniel knocked on my door, flashlight in hand, generators out, he said. Phones too. Even satellite gear. I checked my laptop. It had one file open I hadn't accessed. Agnes _1935.wav. I didn't open it. Not yet. I played the file. Agnes _1935.wav. It began with static, then coughing wet, desperate, rhythmic, then a voice. If you're hearing this, it means I lost her voice. Not just anyone's, not a stranger's. My grandmother's, I was part of the test group. They didn't tell us what it was, said it would make the lungs stronger, but it wasn't medicine, it was sound. A pattern broadcast through the pipes at night. We heard it in our sleep. I think the building wants to remember, but it doesn't know how, so it uses us, replays us, cuts us open to look inside and see where the memory hides. Don't stay. If you feel it behind your ribs, it's already begun. A sharp intake of breath, then silence, then whispers overlapping, indistinct. One stood out. She brought it back with her. And now she's brought you. I dropped the laptop. The screen cracked. Downstairs, the alarms began to wail, then cut out mid-tone. I ran into the hall, darkness all around. Daniel's voice from down the corridor. What the hell's going on? I turned. The hallway was longer than it had ever been. New doors, ones I'd never seen. Some open, some shifting slightly like someone had just stepped inside. The wallpaper changed. Older, 1930s era patterns, gaslight sconces, a trick, I thought. A hallucination, a breakdown, until I saw myself, standing in the distance, watching, wearing a nurse's uniform, holding a scalpel. I backed into my room, locked the door, grabbed the recorder. 1 bar of battery left. I hit record. Log 7. There's something wrong with the structure. Hallways are reconfiguring. Time is stuttering. The marble opened. I think it's. The recorder shut off. Not ran out, shut off. The lights turned red. Emergency backup. Maybe. Then the siren blared again, one long tone, then silence. And over the PA system, a voice I'd never heard before. Dr. Moore, please report to the treatment room. The line repeated again and again. The voice was mine. I tried to leave. I sprinted down the stairwell to the back exit. The door was sealed with rivets that hadn't been there the day before. Daniel was already there, pale and shaking. He pointed at the wall. Fresh concrete, wet, like it had just been poured. There was a door here, he whispered. I touched it, warm, beating, like a pulse, a vibration beneath my feet. Low, continuous, as if something massive had begun to wake below the foundation. Then, from inside the wall, a handprint, pressing out from within the stone. 5 fingers, then 6, then they began to scratch. The holes never stopped changing. I tried mapping them. Spent hours walking, charting, double-checking. But every sketch dissolved under my pencil, always lengthened, doors rearranged, rooms doubled. I left chalk marks that vanished, scratches in the wall that healed. There was no fixed floor plan, just shifting architecture, like the building was breathing or remembering. I stopped dreaming with my eyes closed. Now I dreamed awake, dot, in flashes. Daylight would ripple like water. Sounds would repeat on loop, my own footsteps, but delayed, out of sync, sometimes reversed. I heard conversations I hadn't had yet, voices calling from rooms I hadn't entered. Sometimes I caught glimpses of my own reflection in door glass, but she wasn't moving like I was once. She looked at me and smiled. Daniel was unraveling. I'm telling you, it's not just ghosts, he said. It's bigger, it's structural. We're inside something that's thinking. He showed me a diagram he'd sketched on the wall. Look, he said, the layout, the wings, the chapel, it's a sigil. I cross-referenced it with Appalachian talismanic geometry. This whole building's a ritual vessel. I didn't know whether to believe him. But he'd found a name repeating in the early blueprints, one not listed on any staff records. E. Moore, consultant, 1934. My grandmother's name was Agnes Ruth Moore. My father's name, Edwin. The chapel had changed too. Where once there were pews and stained glass, I now found rusted surgical chairs bolted to the floor in rows, needles embedded in the walls like thorns above the altar, words carved into blackened stone. We lay still, so the sky could forget U.S. I don't remember leaving, but later I found my own handwriting in my notebook. We've always been here. I didn't write that, did I? Martha Green came again, uninvited. She stood in the middle of the hallway, humming to herself, a lullaby I recognized but couldn't name. You remember the sound? She asked. What sound? Her eyes narrowed. The one that teaches the bones to open. She handed me a photograph. To nurses, one smiling, the other was blurred. Not out of focus, blurred by movement that shouldn't exist in a still photo. You're in this, she said. I wasn't born. You don't have to be. Then she walked away. In the dream, I'm lying on a hospital bed, but the ceiling is open to the sky, black and starless. Nurses with blank faces lean over me. One speaks, but her mouth doesn't move. I hear the words from beneath the bed. You came from here, you'll go back. I try to move but can't. Then I feel it's something crawling inside my chest, coiling around my lungs. I look down. My ribs are glass, and inside, Waverly Hills, miniature, alive, breathing. When I woke, my chest was sore, not metaphor, physical. A red mark stretched across my sternum like an old incision, and on my knitstand a fourth marble, this one filled with ash. Sam found me in the laundry corridor, pacing. I'd been following the sound of dripping water. I never found the leak. He looked different, sharper somehow, less affected by the heat. His tie was still perfect. You're unraveling, he said, right on schedule. I didn't respond. He handed me a folder, patient manifest. Found it behind the east wall. Concrete's thin there now. I opened it. Typed names, notes, diagnosis codes, and there it was, more Evelyn J. Admitted. No date, status, pending incision. Notes, subject shows high linguistic retention, unaware of embedded lineage, memory barrier holding. For now, the paper trembled in my hands. I didn't write this, I whispered. But it's you, isn't it? Sam smiled. This place doesn't take people by mistake. He led me to a subchamber I'd never seen below the maintenance floor. Inside, sealed metal drawers. Wall to wall, we kept records, he said. Old Waverly wasn't just a hospital. It was a filter. Caught things coming through. Some were born wrong. Some were opened later. He pulled the drawer open. Inside, my recorder burned, melted at the edges. But I still have mine, I said. Sam's eyes flicked down. You think you do. But whose memory are you in? I tried to leave. Again. This time through the admin wing. Through broken glass and rain-heavy windows. Through vines thick enough to strangle. And for a moment I saw cars on the road, civilization, salvation. I sprinted, dot, dot, as I reached the tree line. Everything blinked, like a dropped frame in a film, and I was standing in front of the chapel again. Daniel found me hours later, seated on the chapel floor. You okay? He asked. I showed him the folder. He didn't laugh. He didn't scoff. He just nodded. Taught they mark us, he said. Before we know, then he lifted his shirt, where surgical scars curved across his chest. Rib extractions, I woke up with them. Never had surgery, never remembered pain, just woke up different. His voice cracked. I think we're being rewritten. Later that night, the radio turned on. I hadn't touched it, hadn't even known it was functional. A voice crackled through female, calm, familiar. Dr. Moore, do you consent to the procedure? Silence. Dr. Moore, do you consent to the procedure? And then, over faint static, they won't ask much longer. Under my pillow, a fifth marble, not round. A cracked tooth, polished, smooth, and filled with ink. Inside my notebook, where I'd drawn map lines, a different hand had finished them, and they formed a circle around my room. The circle on the map wasn't just geometry, it was instruction. Thick pencil arcs connected rooms in a tight radius. My room, the stairwell, the hallway where Martha had stood, the burnt elevator shaft, all of them aligned perfectly with a central chamber marked only with a symbol. I knew that symbol. I'd seen it once in my grandmother's Bible, scrawled in red between the Old and the New Testament. No verse beside it, just a note in her handwriting. Where they watched, Daniel and I pried the door open at midnight. The corridor behind the panel was narrow, curving downward in a spiral, not like a normal stairwell, more like intestines, winding deeper with every breath. The walls were white tile, long stained pink. At the base, a rusted surgical light, frozen mid-swing, like someone had stepped away for just a moment. Glass scattered across the floor, an observation chamber. But not for an audience, for the building. The walls weren't mirrors, they were windows, one way, facing in, each pointed at a different gurney. Most of them were empty. One wasn't. She looked just like the photo Martha had given me, except now I could see her face, my face pale, breathing, eyes closed. Is she real? I asked. Daniel didn't answer. He walked toward the glass, touched it. She's warm, he whispered. She's still warm. The figure on the gurney twitched. A siren screamed. Red lights strobed overhead. The body convulsed just once and smiled. Blood leaked from the mouth. Daniel turned to me. You saw it too. Right, I nodded. I think we're inside someone else's memory, he said. Or we're the memory, I said, being replayed. Back in my room, I opened the notebook. The map was gone. The page was blank except for 3 words in handwriting, not mine. Keep watching, Evelyn. I don't remember sleeping, but I dreamed. I'm standing on the hospital roof. Nurses line the edge. Faceless, one steps forward and whispers. It never let us go. She jumps, so does the next and the next. They fall in slow motion, heads tilting toward the sky. I look down. I'm standing on a gurney. I'm the next in line. When I woke, my feet were wet. The window was open outside on the ledge. My shoes, facing outward, like someone had stood there. Thinking of stepping off, I started losing time in pieces. First it was seconds, then minutes, then whole conversations. I found recordings I hadn't made, notes in my handwriting that I had no memory of writing. Once, I blinked and found myself in a different hallway, facing the surgical wing, blood on my hands. Not mine, no wound. Daniel confronted me. You're disappearing, he said. Sometimes when I look at you, you're off, like an echo with teeth. I tried to argue, but he held up his phone. He'd taken a picture of me the day before, outside room 502. In the photo, I had no eyes, just skin, smooth and blank. But you were looking right at me, he said. I didn't remember the photo. I didn't remember being outside room 502 yesterday. I left the building, walked down the hill to the gas station in town. Half a mile through humid Kentucky air, the clerk didn't look up. You're back, she said. I've never been here. You always say that. I bought a drink. She handed me change in coins, so old the presidents were unrecognizable, worn smooth, like ancient tokens. As I left, she called after me, "You're in the picture, you know." "What picture?" She reached beneath the counter, pulled out a laminated news clipping. Waverly Hills, March 1935, final class of long-term TB patients discharged following successful auditory therapy trials. I scanned the image, 20 patients, smiling, uniform gowns, one figure in the middle, head tilted, me. Not someone who looked like me. Me, eyes wide, unaged, recognizable down to the scar on my temple from a bike accident in 2009. "Where did you get this?" She shrugged. "It's always been here." I brought the clipping back to the hospital. Confronted Sam. He didn't even blink. "You're starting to see it," he said. "Time's a body here, not a river. It folds, it bruises." I shook the photo at him. "How am I in this?" He pointed to the year. 1935. Same year your grandmother checked in. Same year the signal started pulsing. "What signal?" His smile was thin, the one that changed the walls. That night I returned to my room, another marble on the pillow. 6th, this one. Empty, no swirl, no ash. Just a void inside, blacker than shadow. I held it up to the light bent away. At midnight I watched the group photo under a magnifier. In the corner, barely visible, was a window. Inside the window, a face watching the photo being taken, older, colder, also me. I was in the room, I was taking the picture. The vents began whispering yesterday. It started faint like echoes from another floor. I assumed it was Daniel's equipment, or maybe just air pressure shifting through the walls. But then it spoke my name, Evelyn, not in a stranger's voice, in my voice. That's when I realized it wasn't repeating things I'd said. It was saying things before I said them. I tested it. I should leave, I whispered. 2 seconds later, from the vent above the bed, I should leave. I said nothing else aloud all day. The building spoke enough for both of us. In the afternoon, I found a locked cabinet in the basement lounge labeled Oral Rehabilitation Archive. I cracked it with a screwdriver. Inside, reels, cassettes, old dictaphones, hundreds of hours of patient recordings from 1930 to 1975, each marked with a year, a room number, and a name. Most were unreadable, but one tape was labeled 502 more. No first name, no date. I played it, static, coughing, then singing. My grandmother's lullaby, the one Martha had hummed, then a voice, close to the mic, urgent. She's repeating, the patterns holding. Memory is resisting overwrite, subject Evelyn M. Cut off. Silence, then my own voice. I don't remember this, you will. Said another voice, also mine. I brought the reel to Daniel. He didn't laugh. I've been hearing it too, he said. The walls, the thoughts, the rehearsals, like something's drafting us before we speak. He pulled out a sheet of names. I found 45 instances of the name Moore in the old ledgers, men, women, children, no relation on paper, all admitted separately, all in March, different years, always March. Pattern? I asked. He nodded, or pedigree. That night I walked the second floor, each bed frame rusted, rotted. I reached beneath the first, felt rough grooves, used my flashlight more. I checked the next, more, and the next. Every single one, more. I ran back to my room, tried the recorder again. The battery was full. I hit record and heard static. Then a voice not mine, a child's. You were here before. You'll be here again. You're a copy of a copy. You're the place remembering itself. I stared at the vent. The metal grill trembled. A thin ribbon of gauze slid out and drifted to the floor. On it, stitched in red thread. Breathe in. We're almost ready. I found Blackwood in the chapel again. He was burning something bone, maybe, by the smell of it, and humming in a low, steady rhythm I didn't recognize. His eyes were red-rimmed. His hands trembled as he drew a circle in ash on the floor. You should have left, he said. I couldn't. You were never supposed to. He sat me down on the cold stone and poured something dark from a flask into a shallow bowl. It steamed, even though the room was freezing. What is this place? I asked. He didn't answer at first. Then, before the sanatorium, before the farms, before the settlers, this was hollow ground. Hollow not as in empty, but as in eaten through, a wound in the land where time leaks. He drew a spiral in the ash with his finger. The Shawnee called it Atsukuthli, means place of swallowing, a site that forgets the dead but remembers the dying. It mimics the moment of loss so perfectly it can loop it, regrow it, relive it. They tried to seal it, failed. I told him I'd seen myself in a 1935 photo. He didn't flinch. You're one of the echoes. What does that mean? He looked at me like he pitied me. Every few generations, it shapes a person into a pattern, a prototype. It builds them out of pieces from before memory fragments, bloodlines, and finished choices. It wears them like gloves. You're not the first Evelyn Moore. He took something from his coat, a locket, brass, cracked inside, a photo. Black and white, my face, a child this time, maybe 7. She came through here in 1958, he said. Didn't survive. I tried to hand it back. He closed my hand over it. It's yours. As I turned to leave, he called after me. It's not just a place, it's a process. And the next phase begins when you remember the wrong thing. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. The reflection lagged. Just half a second, but it lagged. Then it smiled. I didn't. When I woke the next morning, my voice was hoarse. The recorder was on. I pressed play, my voice, whispering in sleep. Re-entry confirmed. Memory vessel stable. Initiate identity reinforcement cycle. In the background, the sound of surgical tools clinking against a tray. I hadn't seen Daniel in 3 days. No notes, no recordings, no camera gear. His room was empty, bed and slept in, clothes folded, backpack zipped tight. Like he'd never been there at all. I asked Sam. Daniel, who? I asked the staff. Blank stares. I checked the guest log. His name was gone. I remembered him, but the hospital didn't. That terrified me more than anything so far. The sealed-off wing had changed again. new doors where there had been none, a corridor extended where last week there had been a wall. Paint on the floor had shifted symbols, maybe. Not language, topology. I followed the corridor. It dead-ended at room 117, which shouldn't exist. There was no room 117 on any floor plan. No records, no architectural trace. The door was cracked open. The room inside dark, quiet, sterile, surgical lights overhead, no windows. In the center, a circular trapdoor. I pried it open. Below, stairs, not concrete, bone, fused and fossilized into a spiral. I descended without meaning to. Each step whispered, not sound thoughts, prototype, subject reformatting, repair vessel. I reached the bottom, the ritual chamber, a dome of smooth black stone, slick with condensation. The walls pulsed faintly, breathing. In the center, a surgical chair, elevated, surrounded by machines that looked handmade and organic, at once wood and sinew, copper and vein. Beside the chair, a mirror suspended from the ceiling, face height. I stepped toward it. It reflected the room perfectly, except me. I wasn't in it. I turned back, ready to leave, but the stairwell was gone, replaced by a wall of ribs interlocked like a vault door. The air thickened. The machines around the chair turned toward me. I ran, found a side passage, crawled until the walls became drywall again, until I collapsed in the east stairwell. Back in my room, the mirror above the sink was cracked, 5 new fractures, radial, like something had punched out from the other side. I stared at my reflection for just a moment. I didn't recognize myself. I checked my notebook. Pages were missing. Whole sections, diagrams, quotes, gone. Even worse handwriting I didn't recognize had taken their place. You were overwritten successfully, but you remembered too much. At 3:03 a.m., I heard someone humming outside my door, a lullaby. I looked through the peephole. There was no one there, but I saw a shadow on the ceiling above me. My own, moving, humming, even though I wasn't. Sam was waiting for me in the administration office, not pacing, not smiling, just standing behind the old receptionist desk, sorting through patient files with a calm precision that felt surgical. I slammed the notebook down in front of him. Why is my handwriting in someone else's notes? He looked up and bothered. I told you. This place drafts before it writes, and, Daniel, he paused. Sometimes the memory rejects the vessel. He was unstable. You erased him. No, he placed his hand over mine. Cold, you did. When you stopped believing he was real, the place adjusted. It doesn't keep what isn't confirmed. I pulled away. I am leaving. You can't try me, he sighed. And then he changed. Not physically, not completely, but the surface peeled back. His features remained, but beneath them was something less. Authored, a face still under construction, eyes that flickered between colors, skin that held faint impressions, like clay still soft. You think you're the first more, he asked. No, I whispered. You think you're the first to resist? I didn't answer. He reached into a drawer, pulled out a stack of black cards. Each one had a photograph of me, different ages, different eras. Always me, some smiling, some screaming. I'm the handler, he said. I shape the transition, guide the cycle. You're lying. I never lie. I only let you believe what you needed to. Doubt is part of the shaping. It tenderizes the mind, He held up a device. It looked like a microphone except it had veins pulsing along the base. "Do you know what this is?" I didn't respond. He switched it on. The room shifted. The walls breathed. My ears filled with a sound I couldn't hear, more felt than processed. Like my thoughts stuttered. Like a radio just outside the frequency of human language had finally tuned in. And in the static, the voice, not mine, not Sam's, the one from the vents, from the dreams, from the first whisper at Waverly's gate. "We remember you, Evelyn, you never left. You only forgot," I screamed, fell to my knees, the light cracked like glass around me. When I came to, I was alone. Sam was gone, the desk empty. The door behind me bricked over. I checked the recorder in my pocket. Still running. I hit play. Nothing. No voice. No static. Just the slow, mechanical sound of breathing. Mine, but not quite. Off rhythm, slower, like it was learning how. When I returned to my room, the window was sealed shut. Glass fused with the wall. No exit, no air. On the floor, a new marble, 7 now. This one wasn't glass. It was a dried human eye. Etched with my initials, it blinked. The air in the record subvault didn't move. It didn't smell like rot or mildew. It smelled like dust trapped in time paper and skin and dried blood, left too long to mean anything. It wasn't listed on the original maps. I found the entrance behind the defunct pharmacy, sealed behind a cabinet screwed to the wall. Someone didn't want this found inside. Steel racks, file boxes sold, the labels were hand-inked. Light bulbs hanging from cords like nooses, each box marked with a single identifier. ML, then a year, then a number. ML equals more line. I found a folder labeled ML 1935 1A. Subject, more, Agnes R. Observations. Subject exhibits auditory displacement, severe dream retentivity, genetic compatibility confirmed, repetitions viable, intervention, 3 sessions, RESULT, containment failed, residuals present, recombinant potential passed through progeny. Then another ML 1976 to 3C. Subject, more, Edwin T. status. Escaped mid-trial, compromised transfer protocol. Subject exhibiting memory shelling. Site breach probable. Containment status. Inpatient holding. Before, under sedation. Note, recurrence accelerated in progeny CEM 2001. EM 2001. That's me, I couldn't breathe. They had kept him, my father, missing since I was 13. Everyone said he walked into the Ohio River. Disappeared. He didn't. He was here. He'd been here all along. There was a photograph stapled to the last page. Grainy, but unmistakable, a man in a patient gown. Eyes closed. Hooked to wires, and in the background a silhouette behind the glass, watching. Me, same haircut I had now, same coat, but the photo was dated 1998. I would have been 10, the file trembled in my hands, the walls around me tightened. The light flickered to black, and when it returned, a voice echoed through the metal racks he never left. "He's just waiting for your pattern to stabilize." I ran to the elevator, pounded the button for the surface. It hummed, shook, and then stopped. Not at a floor, at before. The doors opened on a dim hallway, rows of locked doors. Behind one, a breathing sound, shallow, repeating. I stepped inside. He was there, on a hospital bed, bearded, pale, tubes in his arms, head shaven, a machine at his bedside displaying EEG patterns that mirrored my own heartbeat. He didn't open his eyes, but the machines turned toward me as I entered, and one word appeared on the screen. "Daughter." He began to speak, but his mouth didn't move. The voice came through the vent in the ceiling, and my voice, "We are not separate. We are the archive. You're almost ready. One more fracture, and you'll fit." On his wrist, a medical tag, it read, "More ET. Reconstructed vessel 01. I don't remember leaving before. I just remember the moment after, standing in my room. But it wasn't my room. It was a replica mirror image dot. Dead on the wrong side. Window where the door should be. The same objects, but reversed. Even the marbles, 7 of them, lined in a row on the sill, except now they worked inert. Each one pulsed, faintly, like a heartbeat beneath glass. My notebook was open. On the floor, the pages kept flipping on their own, every line written in my hand, but in reverse mirrored letters, backwards time, like the book was being read by something behind the wall. I looked in the mirror. This time the reflection moved before I did. It raised its hand first, smiled first, then whispered, "You're catching up." I collapsed. Not from fear, from misalignment. My body wasn't moving the way I meant it to. I'd lift my hand and feel it drag behind. I blinked and saw the moment before the blink. I screamed, but the scream echoed before my mouth opened. That's when the door opened, and Daniel walked in, except it wasn't Daniel. It was the shape of him. His clothes were right, but his face was softened, features unwritten, as if forgotten mid-design. His eyes were wide and empty, and his voice, when he finally spoke, was calm, deadened. "It took me longer. You're adapting faster. What happened to you?" I remembered too early, then forgot too much. He sat across from me. "You need to let go of the timeline. It's the last thing keeping you separate. I don't want to be part of this." He shook his head. "You already are. We're just formatting now." The walls around us began to shift subtly. Photos rearranged, dial patterns reversed. The furniture moved on its own, inch by inch, until the room was a perfect mirror of what it had been when I arrived on day 1. I looked down. My clothes had changed, back to what I wore that first day. Even the old cut on my hand had reappeared. Time wasn't just repeating, it was repairing itself. Daniel stood, walked to the mirror, placed his palm against the glass. His reflection didn't match. Then it stepped through. The glass rippled in. The reflection stood beside him, identical, until it turned to me and smiled. With my face, both Daniels spoke in unison. "The copy is ready. The pattern is stable. You are the last echo." Then, silence. I turned to the bed and found myself already asleep in it, breathing slow, hooked to wires, wearing a patient tag, Moore EJ, iteration 4. The blueprints are hidden behind the east stairwell wall. I only found them because the hallway folded again, opened a pocket where there had never been one. Inside, 3 rolls of paper, drawings of Waverly from 1934, before the final expansion. Except these weren't architectural. They were ritual diagrams, each floor drawn as a circle, a symbol, a sigil, arcane geometry embedded in brick and rebar. And at the center of every level, the mapping chair, I recognized it from the chamber below the pharmacy in the margins, written in red ink. Each patient must carry the seed forward. Recursion is the only continuity. Memory cannot be stored in flesh, only in the shape of flesh. We build the vessel until the vessel believes. There were names scrawled beneath the diagrams. All Moors. That night I found the mapping chair again, but it had changed. Now there were mirrors surrounding it, 7 in total, all angled inward. The reflection infinite, recursive, my face repeating into the distance until it blurred into sameness. And yet, each version was slightly different. One had a scar I didn't. One was smiling. One had no eyes. One had Sam's smile. One was completely still. One watched me long after I turned away. My legs moved on their own. I sat in the chair. The straps closed on their own. No one else was in the room. The machine above began to spin. I felt nothing at first. Then a sharp pressure behind the eyes, at the base of the skull, beneath the ribs, like someone was pouring something into me. Not liquid, not memory, pattern. I screamed, but the mirrors muffled the sound. Or maybe there was no sound. Maybe there was no me left to scream. When I woke, I was lying on the floor outside the chamber, alone, but I was different. The scar I had since college gone. The silver ring I always wore missing, and when I looked in the mirror, my left eye was a different color, not slightly, not subtly, bright green, like the marbles. I opened my shirt, 3 tiny surgical marks across my ribs, fresh, healed, too precise to be accidental. I checked the date on my phone. It read, March 1936. Battery 100%, no signal. The wallpaper had changed again, old, floral, peeling. I was in a version of Waverly I hadn't seen before, maybe one I'd already been in. That night I heard breathing in the walls again, but this time it was in sync with mine, and when I whispered, "Who's there?" the voice from the vet answered, "You are." Then the sound of scissors opening. Right behind my ear, she was in the east corridor, standing at the window, wearing my coat, hair tied the same way I wore it when I first arrived. She turned, met my eyes, and smiled like we'd always known this moment was coming. I said nothing. She raised one hand, waved, and walked through a door that didn't exist a second before. It closed behind her, gone. I thought I was hallucinating until I returned to my room and found my notebook open, a new page. Not my handwriting, familiar but off. The kind of imitation you can't teach. He's not lost. He's just further ahead. I'm showing Daniel the way. You'll understand when we're the same again. Daniel, he was supposed to be gone, erased. But later that afternoon, I saw them both, me and Daniel, walking through the 5th floor ward. She was speaking, he was listening, nodding, afraid. I called out. They didn't turn. I followed them to the mapping chair. She sat him down gently, spoke to him in words I couldn't hear, strapped him in, then turned to face me, raised one finger to her lips. The mirrors turned. Daniel's reflection multiplied, and mine disappeared. I ran, not back to my room, just away, anywhere the building would let me go. I passed doorways that looked like my childhood bedroom, past a hallway where my father sat in a chair, smiling, reading from a book I couldn't see. He didn't look up. I found another version of my notebook in the chapel. Inside, pages and pages of journal entries I didn't remember writing, all signed Evelyn Moore. But the dates range from 1935 to 2027. Same phrases, same dreams, same marbles, different handwriting, different margins. Some pages ended mid-sentence. One ended with a sketch an open skull with a miniature hospital inside. That night, I heard footsteps outside my door. I opened it. Empty hallway, but the recorder was playing on its own. "I think she's doing better this time," a voice said. Mine. "She's staying together longer," not rejecting the pattern yet. Then the second voice, also mine. "We won't need the original much longer." When I looked in the mirror again, I was already behind the glass, looking out, smiling, mouthing words I hadn't said yet, until finally she said them aloud. "You're the rough draft," and I nodded. The building led me. I didn't navigate. I was ushered. Every turn took me closer. The halls opened for me, then closed again behind bricks reforming, glass healing, doors reversing hinges. Waverly wasn't just a structure, now it was a nervous system, guiding impulses toward a brain that pulsed at the center, and the mapping chamber, that was the cortex. The will, I step inside, the lights were already on, the mirrors already positioned, the chair occupied by me. Not a double, not a ghost, not a fractured reflection, me. She looked up, smiled. "I'm ready now," she said. Her voice was perfect, my voice, my cadence, my thought rhythms, but not my mind. I knew because she wasn't afraid. She didn't flinch when the mirrors shifted or the machines hummed. She was calm, fixed, held together by a complete memory I hadn't been allowed. "I held the shape longer than you," she said. "Long enough to become permanent. What are you?" "I'm the version that worked." She stood, the machine behind her powered down. The lights dimmed, but not completely. They didn't need to. She glowed faintly from within, like the light had settled in her marrow. "I needed you," she said. "Your instability mapped the corners. Your fear was a pen, your doubt was scaffolding. Every crack let me in. You're not real, you never were." She took a step toward me. I backed away, but the door was gone. Replaced by another mirror, I was surrounded again. But now only one version reflected back her, not me, not anymore. "I'm not going to let you overwrite me." She tilted her head. "Don't be dramatic. You're not being overwritten." She leaned in close. "You're being archived." She pressed something into my hand, a marble, warm, pulsing, and then she turned and walked into the mirror and vanished. I was alone. The chamber was empty again. The chair cold, the machines silent. But the mirrors still showed her, not me. Even as I stood there watching, I opened my notebook. Blank pages, except for one. A new heading, More, E.J., obsolete. I tried to scream. No sound. My voice recorder lay on the floor, blinking red. I pressed play. It spoke in her voice. "You lived long enough to shape me. Thank you. Goodbye." And then my reflection stopped moving. I couldn't feel my pulse anymore. Not in the wrists, not in the neck. My heart still beat, but somewhere deeper, like it had sunk below the floorboards of my body. I followed the echo of it down through the administrative wing, past rusted file cabinets and walls stained with patient breath. Something was pulling me, guiding me through a hallway that shouldn't have existed, narrow to dark, lined with hanging wires that whispered when touched. Each whisper said the same thing. You know where he is before again. But this time the lights were on, the walls repainted, everything clean. A nurse's station flickering blue-green with digital readouts that hadn't existed even 10 years ago. Modern equipment wired into pre-war brick. There were no doors now, just a long hallway, and at the end a wall of glass dot behind it, my father, or what remained. His body was suspended in a vat like an organ, his limbs no longer individual, fingers fused, veins rerouted into tubing that connected back into the wall. His face was partially intact, eyes open, mouth moving, but not making sound. Instead, a speaker mounted to the ceiling spoke for him. "Evelyn, you found me. My knees buckled, you're alive." The speaker hummed, "I am present. Not alive, not gone, I was the test case." They called it convergence. I volunteered to hold the recursion pattern. They used me to anchor the map. I looked into his eyes. He blinked out of sync, each eye operating on a different moment. Why? Because we believed we could store memory in blood, that identity could be captured. We didn't realize recursion isn't containment, it's consumption. He pressed a hand against the glass. 4 fingers, the 5th had fused into the palm. I pressed mine to match. He smiled, but something behind the smile twitched. "You've almost completed." They needed the final prototype to stabilize. "Your mind is strong, too strong. You held on longer than they expected. But it's time. You have to take my place." "No, yes, I'm not ready." "You were born ready." The lights dimmed. Fluid drained from the tank. The door beside the glass unsealed. A soft mechanical voice spoke. "Subject more. Transfer initiated. Please remain still." I ran back into the halls. The doors closed behind me as I moved. Sealing, locking, not to trap me, to guide me. Toward the chair again, toward what was waiting. The walls no longer looked like walls. Not stone, not paint, not decay. They pulsed gently as if made of skin stretched to thin over something mechanical. The door labeled records opened as I approached. No handle, no sound, just invitation inside. The cold of metal and dust. No more rot, no more mildew. This part of the hospital wasn't abandoned. It had never been. The hallways were lined with slots, each holding a single card. Each card, a name, a date, a condition, all Moores. I pulled one at random. Moore, Althea, 1949. Subject, destabilized at age 16. Memory drift. Emotional echo bleed. Terminated post-ritual. Retain 72% recursion viability. Another, Moore, Jacob minus 1968. Began imprinting prematurely. Pattern mismatched. Echo overflow detected. Reassign the physical component storage. The names went on, hundreds, maybe thousands. I wasn't the first. I wasn't even rare. I was iteration. An experiment in mnemonic continuity, a test of whether memory could outlive the body by replicating its host until one fit perfectly. They weren't trying to preserve people. They were trying to preserve the self, but like clay cast again and again, the edges blurred. Cracks formed, imperfections multiplied, until someone finally held shape, me. At the end of the archive, a chambered circular stone, ancient, lit from within. In the center, a hanging structure like a chandelier made of bones, wires, and reels of magnetic tape. It spun slowly from the walls. Thin threads stretched to it connected through marbles embedded in glass plates. I stepped closer. The machine spoke, not in sound, not in voice, in memory, a flood of thoughts, not mine, visions, lives, errors, deaths, dreams, my grandmother's final moment, my father's first dream loop, my own birth, recorded from inside a different perspective. The fall, the scream, the footsteps, the chair, all replayed at once, layered, perfect. I dropped to my knees. Stop. I said. No sound came out. Only the next memory, and then the next, and the next, until I saw her again, the version of me that replaced me, sitting in a clean room being interviewed. Do you remember the original? Someone asked. No, she said. Only the pattern. How does it feel? It feels like I've always been here. The machine dimmed, and a single drawer opened in the wall inside, a file, labeled not with a name, but a verdict, Moore, E.J., final draft, stable, under it, original status, expendable, erasure recommended, and behind the folder, a scalpel, still wet. I sat with the scalpel in my lap, the file open beside me, the words erasure recommended circled in red, the ink still tacky. The machine no longer spun, the threads no longer trembled. Everything waited, not in threat, not in malice, in expectation. I looked up and saw myself again, not the mirrored version, not the imposter, but the final draft. She stood just inside the chamber, calm, balanced, everything I had ever tried to be, worn without effort. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said. Her voice wasn't mine anymore. It had cadence, but not doubt, confidence, but not soul. You're the scaffolding, she said. The bones they broke and reformed until I could stand. Why me? I asked. You matched. That's it. That's everything. She stepped closer, sat across from me. We were almost touching. She smelled like winter linen and clean hallways. Your mind fractured just right, not too early, not too late. They call it optimal memory lattice, trauma sealed with routine, guilt threaded with intellect. They didn't build you from me, I said. They wore me until I fit you. She smiled. Same thing. I held the scalpel, tried to feel the weight of decision, but the weight wasn't in my hand. It was in her gaze and in the chamber itself. No horror now, just inevitability. You erase me, I said. You lose the origin. She shook her head. The system archived the origin. It'll fail. No, she said. You will. But I won't. Silence. And then she held out her hand, palm up. Give it to me, she said. I looked at the scalpel. It trembled slightly, not from my hand, from inside itself. The metal was warm, pulsing. It had memory now, too. Every version that held it. Every more that ended here. The scalpel had become part of the system. I stared at her hand, thought of my grandmother, of Daniel, of the mirror, of my father's fused fingers pressing the glass, of the 8 marbles, of the voice in the vent, of the word I had never said aloud. Self. I raised the scalpel. She didn't move, didn't flinch. She was ready to be completed. But that wasn't what I did. I turned the scalpel inward and carved a name into my arm. Not hers, mine. Then I whispered, I reject the pattern. The lights went out. The chamber screamed. And the mirrors shattered inward. The moment I carved my name, everything ruptured. Not an explosion, a folding, like paper creasing itself. over and over, until space bled, the chamber bent, stone peeled. The chandelier of wires howled, the mirrors shattered inward shards, spinning midair, each catching glimpses of different Evelyns, dozens, hundreds. Some screaming, some grinning, some repeating phrases I hadn't said yet. One was a child, one was old, one was still wearing the nurse's uniform. They began to speak in unison. You are not one, you are not origin, you are not needed. I screamed back, I am real, but the words had no weight. They fell into the mirror shards and vanished. The room pulsed, and they came through. They walked from the walls, unfolded from the corners. Evelyn's, every draft, every failed print, every echo that didn't fit, their skin mottled, faces incomplete, mouths wrong, but their eyes all mine, they swarmed, not to harm, to overwrite, to reclaim the space I had denied them. I ran upward, the stairs changed as I moved, collapsing, elongating, spiraling sideways. Floor 3 became floor 7, became 1935, became now, became never was. I passed doors marked with dates instead of numbers. MORE 1962, more 1991, more OXOO. Inside each room, another Evelyn, glitching, stuttering, repeating the same phrase. We are the house now, we are the house now, we. I burst into the main hallway, and it was all of them, lined shoulder to shoulder, filling every doorway, looking at me, waiting, the failed ones, the forgotten ones, the final one, too. She was at the far end, still pristine, still smiling. She opened her mouth, let go, and then the building began to collapse. Not fall, not burn, recompile, walls folding inward, glass melting and rising like reverse ash, files burning in sequence, whispering names as they turned to dust, the whole system rebooting, and I ran for the only door left open, the main exit, the one that had always been sealed. It yawned wide now, inviting. As I crossed the threshold, every version screamed, a collective final sound. If you leave, you will be nothing. If you stay, you will be remembered. I didn't answer. I crossed. The air outside was colder than memory. No birds, no wind, just me alone, and behind me, Waverly Hills vanished, gone, no building, no hill, no map, just grass, and a marble still warm. With my name inside it, I walked for hours. The grass under my feet was real, wet, cold. I bled from the sawless stones, slicing through skin to soft from weeks inside. Eventually, I found a road. Cars passed. People stared. No one stopped. I saw my reflection in a gas station window. My eyes still green, one blue, one green. My voice still mine, but when I asked the clerk for a phone, she paused too long. Are you Evelyn? She asked. I nodded. She frowned. Didn't you die in that place years ago? I checked the date on a newspaper. Correct year, correct month, wrong day. Then I saw the headline, Waverly Redevelopment Project Abandoned After Collapse March 12th. All historical records lost in structural fire. No survivors reported. I had survived, but I didn't exist. No birth certificate, no credit history, no digital signature. I went to the university. They didn't know my name. I looked for my apartment. It was occupied by someone else. She looked like me, but thinner, and when she spoke, her voice sounded like mine before I changed. I followed her, watched her. She lived better, simpler. She laughed with friends I remembered, but who didn't remember me. At night, I watched from across the street. She glanced at the window, tilted her head, smiled, like she saw me. Back at a cheap motel, I recorded what I could. Journaled, scribbled, tried to hold on to thought. But every morning, more pages were blank. My handwriting wavered. At times, I would find my own notes corrected, different phrasing, different style, as if someone else, some other me, was rewriting the memory. One morning, I found the recorder playing on its own, my voice. "This is Evelyn Moore. If you're hearing this, I made it out then." Another voice, also mine. "If you're hearing this, you didn't. I've come to understand what happened. I didn't escape the recursion. I became it." They didn't need Waverly anymore. They just needed someone to carry it forward. And now, it's me. Last night I bit my tongue in my sleep, woke to blood. But when I checked in the mirror, my reflection was smiling, mouth closed. And beside me, on the bathroom sink, a marble ... nude, still warm. This one had my reflection trapped inside it, smiling. I took a bus back to Ohio, 12 hours of gray fields and closed gas stations. I didn't speak, didn't eat. No one sat next to me. I'm not sure they saw me. My childhood home still stood. 2 stories, vinyl siding, empty swaying windows like watching eyes. I hadn't been here in over a decade. The front door was unlocked. Inside, nothing had changed. Same wallpaper, same cracked tile in the kitchen, same burn mark on the carpet from when I spilled a candle at 13. I moved through it like I was in a museum built from memory ... until I reached my bedroom and saw the marble sitting on the desk, green, cracked. Waiting, I picked it up. It was warm. I dropped it. It didn't roll. It pulsed. I opened the bottom drawer. Inside, a folder stamped with a hospital seal. Waverly Hills. Inside, black and white photos of me as a child in a gown, hooked 2 wires, then a list. Moore, E.J. Resilience trial, initial fracture, stage 7. Containment breach, 13. Cycle interruption, 27. Field reintegration, successful. Date stamped, last week, and handwriting I didn't recognize. But the signature was mine. I went into the backyard. The tree was still there. The one I fell from as a kid. The one that gave me the scar above my eye. Except I reached up, no scar, nothing. I called an old friend. "Katie," she answered. "Hi, who is this?" "It's Evelyn." A pause, then, "I don't know anyone by that name." That night I dreamed of the hallway again. But now it was my hallway, the wallpaper, the light fixtures, the rug, except it repeated door after door, and behind each one, me, watching, whispering. It spreads better when no one knows it started. When I woke, there was a new mirror in my room. I hadn't put it there. Inside it, my reflection waved, then turned and walked away, but I hadn't moved. And on the desk, a second marble, red, swirling, pulsing in time with the house. I went to the city archives, not for answers, for proof. If my mind was lying to me, if I was still inside the recursion, I needed something fixed, immutable, external. I asked for records on Louisville infrastructure from the 1900s. I wanted to find Waverly Hills again, on blueprints, on maps, on something outside myself. The clerk returned with 6 folders. "Are you sure about the name?" she asked. "Positive." She looked confused. "Because we have 5 separate entries under different counties." I opened the first file. A blueprint from 1931, a school, but in the legend, constructed on the original sanatorium foundations. Second file, a rail depot, 1946, a footnote, WH Wing Incorporated for cold storage. Third file, a military installation, redacted, dated 1965, same floor plan, same corridor length, same mapping chair location. I flipped to a microfiche record local newspaper from 1952, a front-page article. City Hall opens new annex on Hill 93, once site of tuberculosis clinic. The photo showed the building. Recognizable, only now it was City Hall. Another, a death notice. Agnes Ruth Moore passed peacefully at Waverly Retirement Home, but the photo was room 502. Another, a 1987 school field trip. Students gathered on the steps of a building labeled Eastwood Library, but the steps, the same cracked stone, the same railing I grabbed the night the vents whispered my name. I backed away from the reel. "Can I take copies?" I asked. The clerk checked her system, then looked up. "There's no record of the materials you just viewed I ran that night." I sat in a diner booth with a yellow notepad, trying to diagram it, the spread, the reach. But each time I drew a box labeled Waverly, another box appeared beside it in label, but mirrored, until the page was full of reflections. None of them real, all of them possible. The waitress dropped off my check. "Need anything else, hun?" I looked up. She was already walking away, and beneath the check, a marble, pale blue, with my childhood address swirling inside it. I left the diner, walked past a construction site. A billboard read, "Future home of Waverly Crossing, luxury apartments." The font looked familiar, too familiar, as if I'd seen it before it was made. And in the corner of the sign, a tiny logo, a line drawing of the mapping chair. I returned to the university where I taught for 6 years. The walls still smelled of chalk dust and floor wax. Same echo down the main corridor, but the bulletin board outside my old office was new. Not just the flyers, the department itself. Department of Psychogeographic Identity Preservation. Room 213A. My old door, same frame, same scratches. Only now a plaque gleamed beside it. Dr. Evelyn J. Moore, Founding Chair, Recursion Studies Unit. I stared at it for a long time, long enough that a student walked by and said, "Are you going in, Professor?" I turned, he smiled, genuine. "You gave my sister a rect pattern consult last year," he said. Saved her from fragmenting. I opened the door. The lights flickered on automatically. Inside, clean desk, whiteboard, diagrams of Waverly floor plans stylized into academic charts. Framed on the wall, a diploma I never earned, Doctor of Recursive Identity Modeling. Waverly Institute. There was no such institute until now. On my desk, a syllabus. Fall semester, REC 101, Introduction to Psychomemory Geometry, Instructor, Dr. Evelyn Moore, Office Hours, Temporal. Check mirror first. I laughed. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew the punchline. Maybe because the recursion had learned how to make itself feel like home. I open the drawer and sigh. One object, a marble, black, still dead, and on a slip of paper beside it, stability achieved. Thank you for completing your role. Please begin dissemination. I stood at the window. Campus life continued below. Students walked in loops that felt like deja vu. Same patterns, same stops, same gestures. One girl stared up at me, waved. She had green eyes. That night, in my motel room, I opened the last notebook I hadn't touched, blank, except one line. You are not the last, Evelyn. And in the mirror behind me, someone else was writing. In my handwriting, smiling. My name no longer fits like it used to. I still say it, still write it, but it feels prosthetic, a borrowed shape over something more fluid. There are moments I speak and don't know who started the sentence. Other moments where I finish thoughts someone else had, someone I've never met, but who shares my memories like a jacket passed down. I tried to quit the university, packed a bag, typed my resignation, walked down to the office, but the door wouldn't open. Not jammed, just ... wrong. Like the hallway rejected the action, like the system had already written me in. So I turned around, went back to the lecture hall, and taught. The students asked good questions, or echoes aware of themselves. How do you measure instability before the first fracture? If identity is a loop, does the origin matter? I gave them answers I hadn't known before I opened my mouth. And when I asked them to write down their names, a third of them paused. Which one? Someone asked. I knew then the recursion wasn't following me anymore. It was branching from me ... like a rhizome, like a spore. It wasn't a house. It wasn't a site. It was a pedagogy ... at night. I stopped dreaming. Now I just remembered. Other lives, other versions ... snippets of childhoods that weren't mine, but carried my laugh. Flashes of hands signing languages I'd never learned, but now understood. I returned to Waverly's site once, just once. There was nothing there. A green field, flat, silent, except for the plaque. Site of Morse Center for Recursive Anthropology. Founded 2026, in memory of the original pattern. Back in my room, the mirror was gone, replaced by a blank wall, but I could still feel my reflection watching me. Not from behind, from inside ... and under my pillow, a final note. We are no longer waiting for the next Evelyn. We are teaching her. The recorder sits on my desk. It's the same one I carried into Waverly. Same scratches, same red light. But it's no longer mine. It belongs to the recursion now. Everything does. This will be my final entry. Not because I'm dying, not because they're coming for me ... but because my role is complete. I'm no longer the story, I am the material. I have prepared the syllabus. I have annotated my own memories. I have tagged the fractures, indexed the echoes, and cataloged the points of resistance. The marbles have been sent out. 8 scattered, one for each phase. The next iteration will find them, will believe they discovered something forbidden, and in believing will begin. I've seen her already. In the lecture hall, second row, left side, hair tied the way mine used to be, notebook neat, eyes sharp. She doesn't know she's Evelyn yet, but she will. She always does. Outside my window, the world folds in minor ways. A tree that shouldn't be there, a child calling my name in a voice I've never heard. a reflection crossing the glass a few seconds too late. These are not errors, they're curriculum. The recursion doesn't want to be remembered. It wants to be understood. I used to think the horror was being overwritten, but that was a mercy. The real horror is knowing they preserved me intact. I press record. My voices come now. It carries no fear, only tone, clarity, authority. I am the archive. I am the design. And somewhere, in a building that has not yet been built, she is waking up. As I finish the recording, the red light blinks once, then twice, then fades in the silence that follows. A drawer slides open behind me, dot inside, a single marble, clear, empty, waiting, and on the wall in my own handwriting, begin again.